I'm looking at the graph on the left, and I'm going to use the letters that are labeled for each point to identify what they represent on the graph. It says in the directions that some of the points are going to be used more than once, and some questions have more than one correct answer. So we want to make sure we choose all of the correct answers for each of these categories. So the first thing I'm going to look at is I'm going to actually start with the very last one. I'm going to look at the zeros. So remember, zeros are where the graph crosses the x-axis. So I can see 3 points, where the graph crosses the x-axis. But I'm going to put a little star up here because notice that one of them says double zeros. So when it's asking for zeros, it's asking where does it cross through the x-axis. So it would just be a single zero. And that would be points A and C. So I'm going to write down letters A and C. And then there's a third place that I have a 0, but because it doesn't cross through, it bounces off the top of the x-axis. That means point G is a double zero. So it actually count twice. All right, next thing we want to talk about is y-intercept. Y-intercept is where the graph crosses the y-axis. So I can see that I have a point right here that crosses through the y-axis, and that is at point F. My maximums would be like the top of a hill, and I only see one of them. So I only have one hill right here, which is point D, and it didn't ask me to specify, but I'm just going to let you know that it is a relative maximum, and that's because my graph goes up forever on both the left and right side of my graph. So it's the highest point relatively speaking, but it's not the highest point on the graph altogether. And then last but not least, we can talk about the minimums, and there are 2 minimums. One of them is point B and the other one is point G, which you'll notice I actually already used. So I have a minimum at point B and point G, and those are the valleys, like the bottom of a valley. And G is a relative minimum because it's not the lowest point on the entire graph. B is actually an absolute minimum. And again, it didn't ask you to specify those things. I just wanted to make sure I said that part out loud.